Welcome everybody, so glad you're here because this is such an important webinar for quite a few reasons, which we'll see very soon. First of all, I want to show you the new Advanced Awakened Mind pattern. Is Laura Eichmann on board with us today?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. So Laura, if you don't mind, I'm showing your brainwaves here, your lovely brainwaves. Laura has a very stable awakened mind pattern that she just kind of hangs around in no matter what meditation she's doing. So she was really a great person to show her brainwaves. Also, she has one of the new sensors, so I'm going to show you her brainwave patterns twice. So up at the top, this is a screen capture of Laura doing a personal transformation meditation, and you can see that the white outline is the pattern that we've been using in beta, where beta is 60% of alpha. And so is theta, also 60% of alpha. You see how they are, the amplitude is the same on both of them. So Max Cade prescribed that the awakened mind is 30 to 60% of beta and 60% of theta to alpha. So here we have beta at the 60%, right here. And this was an awakened mind meditation that Laura did, and she had a training level 5 of 79%. That was her score in this statistical column chart. And this is her mind mirror summary pattern. You can see that she has a low amplitude gamma. Her strength is in maintaining this awakened mind pattern right here. So the Advanced Awakened Mind, Steve and I were talking and emailing back and forth and realized that there was an opportunity to advance the pattern by making beta 30% of alpha. So that's what this pattern represents. Laura got now 30%, and you can see that her pattern her scores have not changed a whole lot. She had training level 5, 79%. With the current pattern, and now on this Advanced Awakened Mind pattern, she's got 76%. And it's because her beta was low to start with. Her beta was actually lower than that prescribed pattern, the original Awakened Mind pattern. Now, on some people, it does matter, and the scores are very different. This is, he won't mind me showing you, this is David Fairweather. He also was doing a personal transformation or an awakened mind meditation. And you can see that he has more gamma. His gamma is more amplified up here in the 49 and 59 bands, and consequently more amplified in the 38 band, because we have this flow down effect in the mind mirror. The mind mirror is just as organic as neurons in the brain are. What affects an amplitude that affects one frequency bar is going to affect another frequency bar, at least in the high amplitudes here. And so David was doing this personal transformation meditation, and according to the old pattern, he had, on training level 5, 90% rewards. But when you put the Advanced Awakened Mind on him, then he moves down to 77%. So a shift from 90% to 77% is so significant that what it basically says is that he could continue to train on training level 5. Now, what Steve told me, and I believe is widely held in neurofeedback, is that if you are getting, that the brain wants rewards of 70% of the time for it to learn. Below that, it's frustrated. So on this training level, on this awakened mind, the original awakened mind pattern, he could have gone down to training level 5 because he's got 90% rewards here, you see. On the Advanced Awakened Mind, well, he could hang on training level 5 with this pattern and continue to train. This is a slightly anomalous pattern that I've showed you here and here from what you see over here in his mind mirror summaries. You can see that he's moving into an evolved mind pattern on the left. But you see those big high gamma amplitudes there? So it is going to make some differences for people. And to my mind, and perhaps to Steve's also, the big benefit is going to be that this more stringent criteria of the 30% instead of the 60% of alpha means that it's not going to be such a huge leap down to training level 4. And people are going to be able to train on training level 5 more of the time. I don't know why, nobody seems to know why, but when you go from, when self-trainers move from training level 5 because they've got 90% or 85% of rewards, and they go down to training level 4, the brain does get frustrated. The brain seems to be saying something like, what do you want of me? You know, it's just a quantum leap and the demand that we're making on it. So one of the benefits of using the Advanced Awakened Mind is going to be that you can hang around at training level 5 more. It's going to be more challenging to get rewards at training level 5. So does that make sense?
Good, yeah.
Yes.
Now this is for people, this is said for people who have the EEG sensors that were produced before November. So keep in mind that what I'm going to show you next, the new EEG sensor, is going to add a little bit of a level of complexity to what you're seeing here.
Judith, before we move on, obviously, can I just make a comment about
Please.
what we're saying on the screen there? Obviously, we've moved, we now have 2 patterns, the 60% pattern and the 30% pattern. Would there be any benefit in having the ability to change within the options, the 60% to 50 to 40 to 30, in other words, have a slider that allows you to reduce the beta as from 60 down to 30 in steps?
Yes.
Yeah, and your pattern modifier already allows that frequency adjustment in there already allows that.
Okay.
So yeah, certainly people could do that, and that would add even a greater, more challenge levels.
Certainly I can put something in very easily. Rather like the slider for you have on the options now, you can have a slider that says, okay, take beta down from 60 to 50 or 60 to 30, whichever one you want to do.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I'll put that in.
That'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. The more options we have, the easier it is going to be to do this training. And so just to recap what we've got so far, is what we're saying is that with the 60% of alpha that we have had in beta for the original awakened mind pattern, people were getting higher scores. Once we reduce the percentage from 60 to 30, the scores are going to go down. So that's something that people who already, like Laura, have super quiet beta, that's a minor, that's 3 percentage points. That's a minor change. But people who are having, running this gamma, it's going to be a major change from them. So there's a question, does this person really want to train the awakened mind? Or are they going to be training gamma synchrony in the first place? Well, David has gone on to train gamma synchrony because he's got this gamma. And that may end up being the solution for the people I'm going to show you in a minute, or what I'm going to show you in a minute. So just to stick with this and finish it on out, how do we get this advanced awakened mind pattern? Super simple. You go into, either you left click on the mind mirror display and tap O to get to options, that would be the shortcut, or you go to configuration, options, mind mirror to get to this very same screen, and then you just tick advanced awakened mind pattern. It's still going to say awakened mind here. There's no awakened mind, advanced awakened mind option there, just the awakened mind, and tick the advanced awakened mind. And what that's going to produce in your mind to mirror summary is this that says advanced awakened mind. And it'll give you the scores for the advanced awakened mind, but not the awakened mind at the same time. And that's because the mind mirror software is just getting so complex. I think, Steve, I think you said the word clunky. It's just got so much going on now, and from the standpoint of coding, that we couldn't see awakened mind and advanced awakened mind at the same time. So once you're employing that pattern, then this is the training summary you're going to get. Does that feel clear?
Is this a new software download? I haven't downloaded anything for a while. I've just been waiting.
Yeah, that'll be this one. That'll be the current software download, yeah. And also in the current software download is, I hope, notch filters yet for the new ones? Or on the way?
On the way.
Okay, so let me introduce you to what it is that's on the way. So I said that in November, people had, Ballista's released a new EEG sensor. It's fabulous for us because instead of measuring 0.5 to 64 hertz, it's measuring 0.5 to 100 hertz. So we're going to be able to look at way higher frequencies of gamma. Our uppermost 64 inside this 59 band, we're going to have the option to add more gamma bands on. In a minute, we're going to talk to Steve about how we might do that. Right now, I just want to show you that both of these are Laura's patterns. So this is her mind mirror summary for the personal transformation meditation. And this is my older EEG set. So same 79% awakened mind, advanced awakened mind, 76%. But originally, she had received this new EEG sensor, and we didn't know what to make of it because look at the difference in her gamma amplitudes here with the new sensor and her gamma amplitudes here with the old sensor.
Wow.
It's a massive difference. Steve and I have talked extensively about this, and the reason that these gamma amplitudes are lower is because there's, and he can explain this better to you, I'm sure, but what I got out of it is there's a kind of dampening effect on the higher frequencies because the higher frequencies end where they do. This dampening effect does not exist with this new sensor, which is picking up real gamma. So this opens up all kinds of possibilities for us in terms of measuring healers and EFT changes. You know, what exists is there, as I have often posited, is there an evolved mind? Are we really looking, when we're looking at high amplitude gamma above these regular mind mirror frequencies, are we looking at the bottom of an evolved mind pattern? Is that what that is? We're going to be able to see that now. So it's fantastic for us. She was doing the animal sensualization here. She had an awakened mind pattern with this new sensor at 80%, which was a little higher actually than her original sensor because of the type of meditation. You know, she was really doing a great job with the animal sensualization here. But the advanced awakened mind pattern, which requires less beta, dropped her from 76% to 60%. So we have a lot of questions to ask here. The challenge in this new sensor is the flow down from 64 to 100 hertz. So what you're seeing in this 59 band is these as yet unseen, but will be seen by us soon, frequencies. These frequencies up here above 64 are flowing down into 64, 64 is flowing down into 59, and that's flowing down into 38, and that is impacting her awakened mind scores. from 76 to 60. It's a pretty big impact. So we've got some questions that we want to discuss. Steve is going to talk to you about, are these gamma readings reliable? What we want to talk about also is how many bars of 64 to 100 hertz gamma should we add to the mind mirror display? And what that involves is how many frequencies are going to be in each bar. So I suggested 10, and Steve came back and said, that might be a problem. He's going to talk to us about why that's a problem, and we can discuss together how many frequencies are going to be in each bar. And this will be an optional screen. It's not going to be like you're stuck with these frequencies. It's going to be more like you go into options and you click on, I don't know, whatever we're going to name it, high gamma display or something like that, and then you can have access to those frequency bars. But how many should there be? How many frequencies in each bar? What color should those bars be? And then we have another question. Because the flow down from gamma increases high beta amplitudes, should practitioners and self-trainers with the new EEG sensor, should they train with only the original awakened mind pattern, since the advanced awakened mind requires 30% less beta? So it's going to be harder for those folks, as you've just seen with Laura's changes from 76 to 60% awakened mind scores. It's going to be harder for those folks with the new sensors to get high scores. There's another question that popped into my mind. Should we with the new sensors start training gamma synchrony instead of the awakened mind, which allows for more amplitude in the gamma beta frequencies? The gamma synchrony does. And that leads to even another new question. Does gamma synchrony become the new awakened mind pattern for those people with the new EEG sensors? Now, frankly, I find these questions a little mind-boggling. And that's in part because we don't have the data yet. We just don't know what these frequencies are going to look like. We don't know how they're going to affect the awakened mind, but we have them, and that sensor is not going back to the old sensor now. So for those of you practitioners who have the old sensor, and you decide to do group trainings and you buy the new sensor, well, you're going to have two different things going on. Would you end up wanting just to train the old awakened mind pattern that doesn't require that drop from 60 to 30? Would you just want to train gamma synchrony for everybody? Big questions, things we have to study. But at this point, I think I've said all I need to say in terms of introduction, and then I'll just turn it over to you, Steve, and to questions that you guys might have about it. So I guess, Steve, the first question for you is, are these frequencies reliable up to 100 hertz? Can we depend on them?
Yes, you can. The new sensor is much more, well, it's been engineered so that it has a flat frequency response up to 100 hertz. Flat frequency response means that there's no attenuation after 50 hertz. We've radically changed the electronics so that it's much, much more reliable beyond 50 hertz. The original sensor, the one that you guys mostly have, works well for the original awakened mind because essentially it works well up to about 50 hertz. After that, you get a tail off of response, which is what you were seeing before. When we started this project way back 2010, was it, Judith? Mm-hmm. There was no talk about gamma at all, so the equipment that we had was perfectly acceptable. Since then, we've moved on, your research has moved on, and our technology has moved on. So the new sensor is way better. And easier to make as well, so it's quicker. It's always good.
Yeah, I have a question, and that I'm interested in using this for training lucid dreaming.
Right.
And it would appear that the 40 to 42 hertz range is key to being able to become lucid in a dream state. Right. So I'm noticing, I don't remember right offhand, but we don't have that reading of the 40 to 42 hertz range exactly.
You don't have that within the mind mirror, but what you can have is a particular filter put into Villithus very easily, which is just those two frequencies, the 40 to 42 hertz.
Okay.
And is that something you would have to engineer, or is that something he can configure inside of his equipment?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to configuration, it says EEG bands.
Right,
you just add a new band from 40 to 42 hertz.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that before. So it's almost like developing the awakened mind. You get an alpha theta state, but you add that in so a person can hold, say, 40 hertz at the same time, so that they learn to be able to drop down into alpha theta state as they fall asleep, while maintaining that 42 hertz or that 40 hertz range in there.
Right.
Of course, we don't know what's happening in the higher range, because the Buddhist meditators are, producing way over 60 hertz in their meditations.
Mm.
And much of the training in Tibetan Buddhism and the lucid dreaming schools and the dream yogas, they produce very high gamma as well.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge you'll also find with the higher frequencies is that the placement of the electrodes and and how well they're attached play a much stronger part in how you do the hookup. You can get significant noise now from, for example, in the past you've been able to mix and match the electrodes, so you may use the pre-gelled electrodes and the reusable blue ones. Now, because the impedances of those two types of sensor are so different, you have to now either have all pre-gelled or all reusable.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, so that needs to go in our appendix for all people who have the new sensor, right. Is that no longer can you use the pre-gelled?
The only one you can use the pre-gelled on is the ground.
Oh, okay.
The other four, in other words, the two actives and two reference, have to be matched in terms of the electrodes.
Okay, well, I did have that then. That's right.
Also in the lucid dreaming realm, again, that 40 hertz seems to be in the right prefrontal area. Okay. And so I'm not quite sure how that's going to show up with our recordings from the occipitals and temporals.
It isn't, is the short answer. You're only going to get an echo of it. Yeah. I would be inclined to put electrodes exactly where you need them, in other words, on the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, and that's going to change the pattern then of the...
You probably wouldn't be using the mind mirror at this point. You'd be using recordings of that area using other instruments within Villithus.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But let me just add here that I didn't have time to do it, and it's a better subject for a different webinar anyway, once we have more data. But that frontal pattern is not that different from the awakened mind. I don't know, Donna, you did a frontal measurement. I haven't had a chance to look yet.
It looked the same as my other patterns.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. There is less alpha with, oddly enough, it switches around. With eyes open, there seems to be more alpha than with eyes closed. And there seems to be additional amplitudes in theta and delta, yeah. But the pattern shape is almost identical.
She had an unusual, when she would get an artifact when she closed her eye. But she didn't have.
Well, you would do, because if you're working off the frontal lobes, there is so much in the way of muscle around the eye. You close your eye, you're going to get all kinds of artifacts.
It took her a while to be able to relax down, right, and to get rid of that.
But I would expect that to happen.
Yeah, and that is a problem for that frontal hookup, no question about it. And so for that reason, Laura made up for me, and I am going to send for us, and I'm going to soon send out a survey for everyone who does this testing on the frontal to see if you felt like you were tremendously relaxed. There's several questions in it, and one has got to do with it, artifact. Is it?
You could probably see that just in the data, to be honest. You don't need a subjective judgment. You'll see it immediately in the data.
Yeah, but a question will be, did it feel uncomfortable to have them on the frontal rather than in the back of the head? Yeah, so, and then, so Steve, you brought up another question that we need to address here, and that is that because we're looking at these gamma frequencies now, the whole 30 really to 100 hertz range that is vulnerable to mains noise coming out of the wall and SEMG artifact, because SEMG for us is 75 to 100 hertz, then we do need to take certain precautions.
Actually, the latest version of the software reduces the SEMG band to a very narrow band, so you're getting much less amplitude on SEMG, certainly with the new sensors.
Yes. And so we've had to adjust the SEMG inside of options. On the new sensors, they have to be adjusted for SEMG 10 instead of 5 microvolts. That's the very first thing that has to be done, because otherwise you have lights flashing, SEMG flashing wildly, because it's picking, you see the mind mirror is picking up those higher gamma frequencies and amplitudes like you saw in Laura's pattern and saying, no, 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 that's SEMG, when in fact it's real gamma. So, so that is one adjustment that has to be made. And another adjustment, if you're running a laptop, to just only use it when it's fully charged and unplug it. And honestly, I've started doing that anyway. If you have a desktop, then Steve is going to put notch filters in at 50 and 60 hertz for different parts of the world, and then you'll just go into your mind mirror options and click that band to activate those notch filters, because desktop people obviously can't unplug to stop mains noise.
Once that's in there, Judith, I would say everyone should use it, and you don't need to unplug your laptop at that point, because it's, you know, the data will be removed. And it's going to be very precise. It's just the 50 hertz and just the 60 hertz bands that will be removed. It's a very, very sharp filter. And
those would be inside of our 49 and 59 bands, those two.
Yeah, so basically the 49 to sort of the 45 to 55 would be that, excepting it would literally remove the 50 hertz band.
Yeah, okay. So, so let me just say, though, that people who have laptops and can charge them, I'd unplug them anyway. For one thing, there's something about people who even have USB DSUs, there's something about a sound wave, Steve, that can cause amplitude in the higher frequencies. Do I remember?
It's mostly noise coming from the power brick. A lot of these things aren't well insulated. So, you know, you're getting essentially noise, not electricity, but noise rippling out right the way through the system and up the cable. Again, with this filter, with this notch filter, that will be resolved in one go. Okay.
All right. So experiment with it. If you don't need to unplug the laptop, fine. If you find that you do need to unplug it, great. And if you have a desktop, then Steve is soon going to have that coded for you, and I'll let you know by email. The new EEG people. By email, but actually everyone, because if that means you don't need to unplug the laptop anymore, then people with the earlier EEG sensors will benefit from that also. So now I think the question becomes, how do we want to see these higher frequencies in the mind mirror display? Now, can I just start this with a question for you, Steve? I had said, well, so it's 64 to 100, that would be 4 bands with 10 frequencies each, and you said that could be a problem. So why would that be a problem, and how might we resolve it?
Okay, so what you're seeing at the moment in a lot of the cases is more noise, effectively more noise above the 60 hertz. The wider the band, and because we're using very, very lossy filters, I mean, we're using second order filters, so we're getting a lot of attenuation at both sides. What actually happens is you're just increasing the amount of amplitude within that boundary. One of the things we could try, and I'm tempted to do this anyway.
Because of that slowdown, that's why right. That would happen, right?
Right. Because it's basically, because we've got a flat response curve, I mean, you're just basically getting what's there. Okay. Because we don't know how many bands you want, and because we don't know the configuration of those bands, I'm tempted to actually give you the ability to dynamically change the number of bands you're using. So if you want to do it in 5 hertz or 10 hertz, you can. If you're going to be doing research on this, it's not really a good idea for me to start programming arbitrary numbers in there if you can change them yourself. So I think what we'll be doing when we do go to this is you could just say, okay, I want a band to be 60 to 65, and it will then show you at 65 with 62.5 written in the center.
Say that again. How would that work numerically?
How it would work is you would have a table in the options which would say configure the bands for the mind mirror. So whereas now we have something like, let's say 45 to 55 hertz, you could alter that to, I don't know, 47 to 53 if you wanted to. So what I'm proposing is that we have literally total configuration on the bands. You get the chance to change all the bands and all the filters. So if you're doing research on the higher levels, I would suggest that's probably a better way of doing it than me programming a set of filters and then coming back in 2 weeks' time and changing them and then changing them again.
Okay, I see the point. But then, practically speaking, what it would mean is that, say you've got an upper, as we are now, 64 hertz, and then somebody says, oh, I want to study 85 through 90, so then that band would be in there, and then you'd have what, blank space here?
No, you'd obviously have to have something between the 60 and the 90, maybe just one band. It's entirely up to you. What we're doing here is trying to map if you like, the frequency space between 0 and 100 hertz. And what I'm suggesting is we could divide that up any way you want, arbitrarily, so you can literally just decide yourself.
Would we be able to see one frequency at a time? 65, 66, 67? Could we program it to look at that?
You would need very, very sharp filters to do that. At that point, we may as well go to FFTs, which is kind of where we've never gone before because it doesn't give us that information. No, I mean, the short answer is no, you can't. You're always going to have a band of frequencies, simply by virtue of the fact that we are using second-order IAR filters, which are inherently sort of attenuated at both ends.
And the problem with putting 10 frequencies in one band is that, for one thing, we don't have much specificity, but for another thing, those bands are going to be affecting each other. So
they are now. I mean, that's the whole point about the mind mirror. It's designed to affect. So as you see the cascading down, it's actually, that's exactly what's happening. The bands above are affecting the bands below.
Okay, ideas from you guys. How do you foresee this as being most useful to you?
Well, I in terms of use, I'm not quite sure, but I understand what Steve is saying, and I think that's an excellent idea to be able to set your bands. Since we've already set the bands in the lower frequencies at certain ratios, we want to look for those ratios in the upper bands as well. But also kind of thinking about doing the lucid dreaming work again. I've been, and I don't know if anybody's done this, thinking about doing the occipital and frontal hookup. So you have your occipitals and you have your FP. So it's just across the hemisphere rather than from the temporal area. And so you're actually reading the entire hemisphere. And I'm not quite sure what sort of, I haven't looked at it to see what kind of reading you get there, rather than just doing frontals or, the back of the head. Because I think the occipitals are, area is very important for alpha theta work. But you also have to have, some sort of alpha work on the frontals as well. And it's a different kind of reading from the two areas. So anyway, I think I'm going to experiment with that in going across the hemisphere, the entire hemisphere. Steve, of anybody that's used that kind of hookup in the past?
No.
No, yeah, I mean, I've often wondered why not. You know, it just seems like we want to look at the whole hemisphere. You know, we might as well hook up across the whole hemisphere.
Right.
Well, I was just reading Megabrain, and Joseph Light, when he hooked up Michael Hutchinson, Hutchinson reported that he only had 2 electrodes, and they were on the occipitals.
Yeah, yeah, that's used a lot in the past, you know, and particularly in alpha theta work.
Well, that was shocking because, you know, we've looked at how Max was doing it in the later years, and it was this way, the way we're doing it now. So I don't know what differences that would have made in the pattern, but of course we're looking as much as at the dynamics of the pattern as the shape of the pattern. So now, so one question comes to mind for me. If everybody is activating different bands according to what their particular interest is, then how will we accumulate a body of information that we can share for possible discovery of new patterns?
You have to remember the raw data is the raw data. It doesn't have any bands in there. It's what the way Velocis is designed. You have the raw data, then you have your user-definable bands above that, and then you have the visualization of that.
Okay,
So
so that's just an interpretation, right?
Sorry?
So the pattern is just an interpretation of the raw.
Correct. Yeah.
So we could share sessions and experiment around in that way.
Correct.
I just had a question because you said there could be potential conflict, you know, if people, for people with gamma, it's kind of, I guess, obvious that they should train gamma synchrony and we need these upper bands. But in case of just someone who is still training at lower levels, do we have kind of an option to switch it off if we don't need it, you know, these extra bands, because they'll just confuse and, you know, mess up the data and statistics?
Absolutely.
So
basically,
I guess it
press
makes
G.
sense. And then it won't be reflected in this final summary, because it won't. It only I mean, only if you have gamma, it will be reflected in awakened mind score, right? Final score. And if you don't, it won't affect it.
No, the awakened mind pattern finishes at 40 hertz, so there's no gamma there.
Right. Yeah, that's the saving grace here. You could turn off all the gamma and still train the awakened mind, except then you have the question that you're going to have more beta flowing down from that as a flow down from that gamma. So that's the question.
Well, that's a question in itself, Judith, whether that actually happens.
What, you mean that might not happen?
Absolutely. That's something you'd have to check.
Well, Laura, for example, didn't show much high beta gamma at all on my sensor, but on the new one, there's a lot more gamma.
Remember what I said about the sensor being a flat frequency response. The response from about 40, 50 hertz is okay, but it attenuates after that. So some of the stuff that Laura was seeing, and because we're using very slack, if I can use that word, filters, you're getting a lot of flow down from the filters, but that's purely a function of the filtering.
Now that explains something that we saw in France a number of years ago when we were measuring a fellow who was trained as a Buddhist monk with the old mind mirror, with a mind mirror 3. And what we were seeing was a nice awakened mind, but we also saw at the very top band a huge gamma or huge flare that was just solid up there. So we were probably seeing the flow down from gamma in the upper frequencies.
Definitely.
Which we assumed, you know, that this was, you know, what was happening there. And because I know he wasn't ruminating about anything.
I just have a question, because the part I'm struggling with, so for my brainwave patterns, I didn't have the gamma till you use the new sensor, but someone, like I think it was David, you said the next person, or I've definitely seen people that have a lot going on in the gamma, And then I would assume once you switch to the new sensor, does that just mean they will have like an insane amount then if you're picking it up on the old sensor?
Not necessarily, I think is the phrase.
Okay.
You know, depending on the amount of of impedance on the electrodes on a session, you will get more or less noise. So, you know, one of the things to check is how well you're getting. And if you're getting lots and lots of gamma, then I would, and it's flat right the way across the range, and you can see that from an FFT, one of the other instruments on Vilisys, then I would be inclined to check whether you have a good connection. Stunned silence. Oh dear.
Now, to me, it raises a question then how to make sure that we don't interpret just new sensor for real gamma, you know, compared to old data, so that we clearly know the threshold kind of, or saying, oh, if it's above that, or if it looks like that, that's definitely gamma, you know, it's true. And it doesn't matter what sensor you put on, you'll probably see just more of it with a new sensor, but it's definitely gamma. So I guess we need maybe more instructions and clarity on how to make sure we avoid all the artifacts and we do the right hookup. We don't mess up with it, and that's correct, because I guess, yeah, more and more people will show gamma in general, and the awakened mind will be more and more common, the old awakened mind. So
one of the ways of showing this very easily would be to use the pre-gelled electrodes and just put 5 electrodes across the forehead as high up from the eyes as possible, okay? Because they're the pre-gelled electrodes, and if you clean the skin beforehand, you should get a good connection. They're probably the best electrodes for connections. And then see how much gamma you're getting. See what you're getting in the upper ranges. And if you're getting huge spikes, then I'd be interested to see that recording.
okay.
So if I understand this right, if we don't switch on the Advanced Awakened Mind button box, we'll just get the old Awakened Mind pattern. Okay.
No. The only difference between the Awakened Mind and the Advanced Awakened Mind is that the beta is now 30% rather than 60%. There's no gamma in the Awakened Mind pattern.
Okay.
I wonder, Andrea, if you have any comments.
I've got one comment. I think, in fact, we need really more research on all this stuff with a new sensor. And I think it's a brilliant idea to have the opportunity to adjust the frequency bars, especially also in the lower frequencies, because we've got some people with a high peak of alpha, for example. And if we have the option to adjust the whole pattern or the whole frequency bars, then we could measure the alpha peak, for example, with a Swingle protocol. I think that picks up the exact alpha peak, and then to adjust the whole pattern, the Awakened Mind pattern, also to higher or lower alpha peaks. Is this possible with this individual adjustment?
Yep.
I think that would be really cool, so we could map an Awakened Mind pattern also for people with a lower and higher alpha peaks than it's as we see it on 10.5.
Are you talking about the descending alpha that we have in the old Awakened Mind pattern?
Yes, and also so we have some people that have got a lower alpha peak and some people have got a higher alpha peak.
Beyond lower than 9?
Yeah, or it's 9. But sometimes we see a really high alpha peak, and to measure the alpha peak is really not that complicated, and the software picks it up really, really quickly. And so if we were able to adjust the frequency bars individually, we could adjust it to one individual very precisely. And so I think we have to simply play around with all these gamma and how to adjust the frequencies or the bars, and to have a look at the research. So maybe to find out what research or what frequencies are interesting in gamma, So let's say the lucid dreaming is interesting, this frequency bar, and to find out what is interesting. So what on which frequency bar we want to focus on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what I'm taking from your suggestion is that we just wait and see.
Yes, that's it.
I don't think we can assume anything here. As far as I can see, there's been no research of this up here, certainly for the kind of things you want to do. And there's very little research, to be honest, that's been published on gamma, comparatively speaking. So, I mean, you're kind of trailblazing.
Yeah, definitely This is our pioneering realm here. This is our frontier, gamma is. You know, there's been a lot of research by neuroscientists, but they're all looking at these individual EEG, you know, category amplitudes in an isolated way. But we're definitely seeing some extraordinary things. We definitely see that this gamma rides on the theta and the delta, and we've also seen that the evolved mind pattern produces gamma, starts the production of gamma when someone flares into that evolved mind pattern, that there's gamma involvement. So looking at the higher frequencies, you know, the whole pattern's probably a flow down from the higher frequencies, esoterically speaking, and software speaking as well. So I agree with Andrea that wait and see, but I'm still not clear about how you will include this option for us to look at these frequencies. I mean, what will be our choices?
At this stage, you can have whatever you want. I mean, it hasn't been written yet. So how I would do it would be to keep the existing bands the way they are, because once you start messing about with those, you haven't got a mind mirror anymore. You've just got a whole bunch of data.
Right.
For the things above maybe 50, 60 hertz, you would be able to break them down into whatever frequency bands you wanted. So there'll be a screen that says go from 55 to 60 or 55 to 70 or whatever. You just select those, and the next time you look at the mind mirror, there it is.
Cool.
Or the whole thing, or you could say 64 to 100.
Sure. I wouldn't want to do that because the amplitude on that would be enormous.
The amplitude, why?
The bigger the frequency band, the more amplitude. Because if you think about it, each individual frequency has an amplitude. So if you've got, let's say 50, 51, and 52. And we just take an example of 1 microvolt each. Okay. So if your band is 5 wide, you have 5 microvolts showing on the mind mirror. If your band is 40 wide, you have 40 microvolts showing on the mind mirror. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. We understand it.
It would hit the walls.
Yeah, which is what we saw with the old mind mirror. Going the other direction, going into the infra-low frequency bands, I had a thought when we were at the Trans Tech and I was talking to Othmar about this. It suddenly occurred to me that these low frequency bands are like breathing, because we're only seeing, you know, maybe 6 cycles a minute, 10-second cycle, which is, you know, difficult to train for. But my thought was that if we have these low frequencies, say 0.01 or less, that in the mind mirror, what we would want to see is something like a breathing pattern where maybe the intensity of the mind mirror pattern gets dimmer and brighter. So the brain is just sort of picking up on this breathing pattern in the frequency in the picture of the mind mirror pattern.
Let me give you, before we go any further, okay? Yeah. That's a function generator. That generates a waveform. That's what we use to test the mind mirror. In fact, that's what we use to test for listeners.
Okay.
That costs about £500, okay? That goes down to half a hertz, so 0.5 hertz. If you need to go down to very, very low, you're adding maybe 10 times that amount to the cost of that equipment. And we would need to know how many people were going to support that development, because if we are going to invest £5,000 on a function generator to test the very low frequencies, we would need to have a fair number of sales stacked up, ready to go on that.
Well, yeah, I see your point. You know, well, it was just a thought.
No, it's a very valid point, but unfortunately, economics on these things, once you get down to the very low levels and the very high levels, the cost of the equipment just to do the testing just goes through the roof.
We'll just have to wait for the equipment to catch up with what we need, or what we'd like to see.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't realize that the equipment itself would be that much more expensive.
Basically, we're talking about scientific equipment that's looking at very low frequencies.
Yeah.
In order to generate those, that is quite expensive.
Okay, well.
And it would require a whole different technology within the sensors as well, because at that point you need all kinds of noise cancelling in there to avoid being trashed by any kind of noise.
Yeah, well, we'll put that on the back burner for now.
That's a good idea.
Then I'm waiting to hear more details about what we do to acquire the new sensors.
Okay.
You mean besides purchase them?
Yeah, I mean, how does that work? We just replace all of our old ones?
There's no real need to replace. I mean, the question is, if you're going to be doing research in the gamma frequencies, then probably it would be a good idea to have the new sensors. But if you're doing mind mirror work with clients, generally speaking, you're going to be just working in the normal range. So I would see no need to replace sensors until you needed them. I know that's me shooting myself in the foot and saying, you know, as a great bit of sales there, but sensibly, don't buy things you don't need.
But I think they're doing research, so maybe their question is, can they trade their old ones in on the new ones?
I'd have to talk with the factory about that. There are significant issues there.
I'm assuming we still use the same DSU.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? Questions, issues, challenges?
Steve, just one question. You talked about new sensors, and you mentioned this should be different electrodes. So, how will principally different be new sensors when you try to hook person up?
The only difference you'll notice is that you're getting more response. So there'll be more information coming in at the higher frequencies. As long as you use, as I say, the same electrodes on the actives and the reference, you should have no problem. And to be honest, with the mind mirror as it is at the lower levels, you should see no difference at all. It's a clearer response. It's a much cleaner response.
And you mentioned that we shouldn't use pre-gelled electrodes, so we should use different ones. And I'm now a bit lost in the variety of electrodes that we have.
But my advice would be to use the blue electrodes for the active and the reference, so the red and the black. And you can use the pre-gelled for the white one, the ground.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned.
Yeah, that's what we do now.
Right. Unless you're bald, of course, in which case you can use pre-gelled on them all. And I'm looking directly at you, Daniel.
And hello, by the way. Long time no see. South of France, first time I've seen you on a webinar. It's so grand to see you. John, to see you too.
The right timing for me. So thank you for the time of the webinar. Instead of 3 in the night or things like that.
Time of day.
Yep.
I have a very few experience with gamma, but I've seen that it does, when people are working in gamma, something is happening in the revolution. I've seen people being able to work on gamma and really developing themselves as spiritual people. amazing. So I don't know what came first, working on gamma or becoming spiritual. I don't know, but there was a link between both. You see what I mean?
Yes. You know, you and I talked about this on the way from the airport. That was our first conversation. And
yeah.
So this is of tremendous interest to all of us, I think. And it's a chicken and egg question. You know, who knows? Certainly, if you develop your brain waves from the silent no beta meditation pattern into the awakened mind pattern with problem solving beta, and there's a progression on into the evolved mind circle, at any point you can have a spontaneous illumination that gives you the gamma, or it can develop out of those progressive patterns. So I don't know that anyone knows. They certainly know, the neuroscientists certainly know, that the Buddhist monks and the Carmelite and Franciscan nuns who have these spiritual devotional practices are the ones that have produced a lot of gamma, or are producing a lot of gamma. But it's also true that you can go down into an awakened mind meditation and have very high amplitude theta and delta, and then the gamma starts to ride on top of that. So it's my best guess is that it's an expansion of awareness from the human self to a spiritual self. And however you do that, whether it's in a progressive way or whether it's a sudden connection with your source, it has these extraordinary effects of giving you more brain cells and synchronizing the lobes of your brain and making you more compassionate, because you then see and understand things that you didn't have access to before. So how it happens depends on who you are. Don't you think?
It may have a relationship too between the synchronicity of left brain and right brain. It
Definitely.
could have a link to the flow.
Definitely that. Definitely that. And that was one of the first things Max said, that no higher states of consciousness are possible without bilateral hemispheric symmetry. So yeah, they knew that back in the 1960s. That's how all higher states start. You synchronize the brain to start with. But it's also true that going down into theta is what synchronizes the brain. So the main way we do it anyway. So this gamma is super important to us, everybody. I know you see the importance. The question of whether you use an awakened mind or an advanced awakened mind is also super important for the people who, it's nice for the people who have the old sensors to be able to just make a choice. You can decide whether you want the more stringent training of the 30% beta. For the people with the new sensors, you may well have to use the advanced awakened mind because your additional gamma is going to show more amplitude in that gamma beta range. So luckily we've got that pattern in place, or use the gamma synchrony pattern. Now that would be for self-trainers. Practitioners, I think we're just going to have to study and wait and see what happens. And when Steve gets that option in there to add those gamma bands in whatever way we see fit, I think we're probably just going to have some working groups and say, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I saw, and try to develop an understanding of what's going on in those super high frequencies. I'm still not clear on why 100 hertz gamma would by definition have greater amplitude, unless it's just vulnerability to SEMG. But I guess we can.
Yeah, it is. Frank, if I could just jump in there. If you were to put your sensors on your arm, for example, and just flex your wrist, you will see wide spectrum EMG noise. Okay, generally speaking, it's when you get up into those frequencies, the EMG is quite strong.
Okay, so then what you're saying is that we could safely monitor up to 75, where SEMG runs 75 to 100. So we'd be a little bit safer down below 75.
My suggestion would be that if we're going to do this properly, you can essentially do whatever you like in those bands. You can calibrate that chunk from 60 to 100 hertz, either in one band or 20. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely exactly what you want to see on the screen.
But this does kind of impact our frontal awakened mind and our intention and our efforts to move toward a frontal hookup for mostly self-trainers, really. And big things like the Joe Dispenza workshop, where we want to hook up a bunch of people quickly. And, you know, I've done a lot of experiments with this frontal hookup, and it is really vulnerable to the tiniest little, not only movements of the forehead, but eye blinks, and even not so much when you get, by the time you get down into theta, because your stillness is more profound. But when you're on the way down to theta, even the movements behind closed eyes can cause some CMG artifacts.
There is so much. We have so much muscle around the front of the face in comparison with the back, that you're always going to be susceptible to muscle artifacts. And you know, there's no way around that problem. The higher you get up onto the forehead, the better it is. But you know, if you're working low down here, then you're going to be getting TMJ noise. You're going to be getting eye blinks. You're going to be getting raised eyebrows. You know, people twiddling their, you know, wagging their ears are going to do it as well.
Yeah, which we've talked about before, having the only solution of you go into the SEMG artifact summary and you just isolate those blinks and you take them out with the artifact markers.
Yep.
But it does make a case that, you know, Max Cade's temporals and occipitals hookup was really superior for avoiding all that. So now with the new EEG sensor, to put that on the forehead when it's already going to be, you know, that I'm not sure what that's going to do. We have to test it and see.
Well, I should say that what's currently in the software, not specifically in the reporting, is there is a way of identifying. If you go and look at the sort of the display summary and you look at, I don't know, whatever it is, the raw data, you can right-click on it, go to display options, and there is a identify artifact, and that then shows you the artifact in the session. There's no reason why we can't take that a step further, and once the artifact has been identified, chop that out of any calculation you do, if that will be useful.
That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. I can put that in.
As long as we understand that to not destroy real gamma, you have to first look at your gamma summary window, because, and so now how we differentiate SEMG artifact and gamma is that we look for steady rises in gamma. Because if it's just a quick burst of gamma, then it's probably SEMG artifact. But if it's a steady rise, if it's an accumulation, then they're really producing real gamma. We can count on that. Or somebody's walked in with a Mac computer, or there's some kind of external noise happening. But so that would be the only detriment to making the identify artifact clear the artifact, is that you wouldn't want to clear the real gamma. So maybe
have you established that sustained gamma is possible?
Is looking at the gamma summary window, and you can see the increase in amplitudes. And then
No, I'm sorry, no. when you're looking at it, can you actually see a sustained gamma burst for a period of time that is independent of any movement?
Absolutely. And not only that, the client will say, yes, that's when I had a light pumping into my head and I had a download of all kinds of spontaneous insights.
Okay.
So it's the match. It has to be the match. But if you're, I mean, I did see the identify artifact. So if that could be a separate, remove artifact would be a separate option.
Yep, that's certainly possible.
What color are the bars going to be?
What color would you like the bars to be, Judith?
That's what I'm bad at color. That's one question I want all you guys. I mean, do we want them to be the gold of higher confidence? Or
I really, really don't want to get into the what color is it going to be today question, if you don't mind.
Well, can we just have a quick survey? Has anybody thought about it? Because I did put the question out.
I think white light is the best.
I was thinking the same thing. Hey, do we have it either gold or what? No, that's. Starts to get silly.
Pink.
Pink.
Pink, right.
All right, so we'll pink, right? All right. Polka dots. Okay.
You know, I kind of expected you to say that next.
Donna likes
That was
purple.
Delta.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Delta tell you that. Okay, has
I have a
anybody
question.
got questions? Because it feels like we have got some solutions here, and the solutions are that Steve's going to give us some options on how to include those bands. I don't know what's going to be the solution for people who have the old EEG sensor and the new sensor, because then there's going to be a tendency among us practitioners to say, oh, you've got gamma, where in fact they've just got the new sensor. So I would suggest that I would just ask Steve if you could talk to Nigel about that, and see if a trade-in is going to be possible.
Okay, I mean, how this is going to pan out, I suspect, is the first question I'm going to get asked is how many. Okay, I think what you need to do, Judith, is take a poll amongst your customers. Tell me how many want to trade, and then I can go with a sensible question. If I just go and say, I want to trade out one, Nigel is going to look at me as if I'm crazy.
Sure. Okay, we'll do that. And that's something we probably should have even a working group. Laura, can help, or Oksana, can you help figure out? Well, I guess we could do it on Zoom. We need a working group to figure that out, because this is really a huge thing. If you think about practitioners have the old sensor now, they trade in for the new sensor, they're going to get this bigger gamma on their people, and who knows what influence that one person's gamma is going to have on another person's gamma. I mean, there are unforeseen consequences here. So I think we all need to really think about this, particularly because of the flow down. The flow down is the biggest issue for us right now. Not just from 100, but even from the new pen sensor picking up, even if we're only looking at 64, clearly you saw in Laura's patterns, went from here to here, big difference. So I think it would be very confusing to have an old sensor and new sensors for practitioners who are doing group trainings. I suspect that you'd want to have one of one kind. And then that brings to another question, Steve, if you would ask Nigel this: is it possible to regress and have, for the people who already, if he doesn't want to do a trade-in, is it possible for us to still order the old sensor?
As I understand it, that is no longer possible. The boards have been changed. I mean, again, we could probably do it, but there would be a cost implication in that, because we would have to re-originate everything and just change the manufacturing process again.
So the old sensors are actually no use to you now. if someone will want to trade that sensor in.
Well, what I'm assuming what it's going to come down to is what's the lowest price we can get for new sensors. So if you came to me and said there's 100 sensors that want to be replaced, I can probably do you a very good deal on that. Probably. I need to speak with Nigel.
What we're thinking is that since we have 4 of the old sensors, using that for group work, but maybe one of the new sensors for one-on-one work, and that might work out that way.
That's probably a good way of going forward. I really wouldn't jump into changing these things until there's an absolute need to do it.
Yeah.
So Stephen, how do we know we have the new sensor?
You have
generally speaking, if you look on the back of the old sensor or on the sensor box, if it has the label EEG OG2/5 and a serial number, but no third line, then it's the old style. If it has 3 lines on where it's got the serial number, it's the new style.
Yeah, and Tim, you have the new one because Laura had the first one I saw, and that was in November.
Okay, I figured I did, but I thought for other people who may have 2 sensors, they may get confused. Do I have the new one or do I have the old one? And how do I tell the difference?
Yeah. Well, you're going to see the difference in that gamma amplitude.
Okay.
Of course, you won't know that it's real gamma, but on the new sensors, you will. It will be real gamma.
Right. I just want to say hello to everybody, since I'm a brand new Mind Mirror owner for now. I've had mine for a week.
Wow.
Nice to meet you, Tim.
Okay, nice to meet everybody.
Where are you?
I'm in Long Beach, California.
Whoa, nice place.
I imagine it's warmer than it is here.
It doesn't feel really cold and really warm in my room, but I'm sure outside it's probably like 60, so no complaints.
That's summer here.
So we have a lot to think about then, and a lot to test and a lot to look forward to. Ooh, what are we going to find out? My. It's going to be very interesting. I think this is our research opportunity to test ordinary meditators against healers. Are we going to see hyper amplitudes up in the gamma range? We should. And we may well end up with some new patterns. I think we will. Max Cade predicted that with new equipment, with increased sensitivity, we would see a state 7 and a state 8. We're seeing state 6 with the evolved mind. I think we're seeing 7 and 8 with the gamma synchrony, and then this universal consciousness over the evolved mind pattern, the gamma over the evolved mind pattern. But who knows? There could be a 9 and a 10 and a 12. Or maybe we start rethinking the patterns that we've got because of these new sensors. All that's to be continued and defined in future. But thank you very much. If you have no more questions at the moment, thank you very much for being here, especially Oksana and the wee hours of the morning. And we hope to see you back. And we'll set up a working group once we've got enough of these new sensors going around and enough patterns that we're looking at, and try to see what we're seeing. And Andrea, as for your descending alpha thing, may I just say that I think we have descending alpha in the awakened mind so that you get a score for the 9 hertz. Is that right, Steve? He might be gone pecan.
No, I'm sorry, I got distracted there. Sorry, what were you saying?
Do we have descending alpha in the advanced awakened mind so that
Yes.
you get a reward for the 9 hertz? Okay. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Steve, very, very much for your continued kindness and, of course, these innovations which just keep making this equipment and our research better and better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Okay, thank
Bye, everyone.